My name is Rowan, and I hadn't heard from my family in 5 years, until the envelope arrived, sealed in lavender wax like nothing had happened. It was elegant, curated, and cruel in its own quiet way. A baby shower invitation for Savannah, my sister. The same sister who once texted me, "You act like you're better than us just because you read estate law." The same mother who told me, "You chose to leave. Don't expect a way back." They edited me out of photos, out of group tags, out of memory. And now they wanted me to RSVP. What they didn't know was, I never left empty-handed. I brought the deed. I brought the chat logs. I brought the truth. Signed, dated, and notarized. I didn't go to be welcomed. I went so their silence would finally have to speak. But the reckoning didn't start with me. It started with my son, 6 years old. Brave enough to ask in a room full of strangers, "Why don't they know I'm your son?" That question did what years of legal documents couldn't. It made the lies unravel. Before I show you how an entire curated legacy collapsed under the weight of one small voice, tell me, have you ever been erased from your own family story? And if this resonates, like and subscribe. Some stories aren't rewritten. They're reclaimed. It was sitting on the kitchen table when I came home, the soft drizzle outside blurring the windows like watercolor. Darren must have picked it up from the mail slot. It was too elegant for a bill, too personal for junk. Handmade cream cardstock, calligraphy that curled like it belonged in another era. I didn't have to flip it over to know who it was from. That shade of lavender had been my mother's favorite, reserved for weddings, holidays, and photo albums that never included me. Darren looked up from where he was spooning cereal into Leo's bowl. "That from your family?" he asked gently, eyes scanning my face for any crack. I didn't answer. I broke the seal and read, "You are invited to a baby shower for Savannah Wren. Saturday, May 11th. Wren Family Estate, Tucson, Arizona. Please RSVP by May 1st. The lavender wax was suddenly too much. I set the envelope down, sat on the edge of the counter, and stared out into the rain. The last time I saw my mother, she looked me in the eyes and said, "You chose to leave. Don't expect a way back." Her voice had been sharp but weirdly calm, the way a door clicks shut behind you. She didn't yell. She just removed me. And now, 5 years later, she wanted me at Savannah's baby shower. I let out a slow breath. Darren placed a warm mug of tea in my hand, his other one brushing my thigh lightly. "You don't have to go," he said. "I know. But maybe you should. Not for them. For you." "I don't need closure," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "Then for Leo." That landed. Leo, sitting cross-legged on the floor, was poking at his cereal with a spoon. "Is Arizona hot?" he asked, eyes wide. "Depends where you stand," I said without thinking. After breakfast, when Darren took Leo for a walk, I sat alone on the living room floor with my laptop. I typed my name into a search bar, not out of vanity, but instinct. The first result was Savannah's Facebook. I hadn't looked in years. The baby shower invite was posted there too. Hundreds of likes, comments with pastel emojis, and "so happy for you." But that wasn't what hit me. It was the photo header, a family picture taken 2 years ago. My parents, Savannah and her husband Mark, even Brian, our cousin from Colorado. The caption said, "Wren Legacy, strong as ever." My spot in the photo had been cropped out. I remembered standing right next to Brian that day. And yet, in this version, I didn't exist. Another album from years before had a different photo. I zoomed in. My name, Rowan, had been edited out of the family tag. Just a clean break, no trace. The silence wasn't neglect. It was curated. I shut the laptop. When Darren returned, he found me sitting by the hallway closet, papers scattered around me like fallout. I held up a small, pale folder. "You kept it?" he asked, crouching beside me. "I always knew they might forget," I said, "but I never wanted to." He nodded, quiet. Inside the folder were copies of the property transfer, dated and signed by my grandfather, not my mother. The house they claimed I abandoned? He left it to me before his stroke. The emails between my mother and her attorney trying to contest the deed. My counter notes, calm and legal. The silent war they lost and never admitted. There were old chat logs, too. Moments between Savannah and me that hinted at the fracture before it broke. One message from her. "You always act like you're better than us just because you read estate law." I smiled, but it wasn't joy. "You think bringing this will help?" Darren asked. "I think I'm tired of pretending it never happened." He looked at me for a long moment. "Let them choke on the facts, then. Not your anger." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just awake." That night, after Leo went to bed, I packed. Not everything, just enough for 3 days. I laid out Leo's travel clothes, a pale blue button-down, khaki shorts, and the small bow tie he wore when he wanted to impress someone. He didn't know yet what this trip was. I wasn't sure I did either. I put the folder in my carry-on. It didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like insurance. For once, I wasn't walking into that house unarmed. Before turning off the lights, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Tucked beneath old journals and a worn flash drive was a sealed envelope. I added it to the folder. Then I sat, hands still, breathing quiet. I wasn't going for them. I was going for the silence they thought would protect them. ChatGPT Janoi. Toi kong hanra savannah ko mot em gailon hon, ngoi funu jeo choi ngok whispered saubia mimosa. I heard it as I stepped into the room, the last breath of her sentence curling around the flute glass like a ribbon. She didn't mean to be cruel. That was the brilliance of it. It was all unintentional, all part of the curated blindness that surrounded this family like velvet drapes. Soft to the touch, smothering just the same. The Wren estate in Scottsdale hadn't changed. It was still painfully symmetrical, like someone had designed it to be admired rather than lived in. The front lawn had fresh sod rolled out just for the event, and the pastel balloons, so many it looked like a sky of fake clouds, bobbed in time with the gentle hush of the outdoor fountain. White-gloved servers glided like ghosts. The inside reeked of lavender and old money. There was no name card for me at the welcome table. No one offered to take my coat. My mother floated by twice, but her eyes passed over me like I was a painting she didn't like. I watched her rearrange napkins and micromanage appetizer trays like a general preparing for war, not a grandmother celebrating new life. Savannah made her entrance 20 minutes late, of course, with a silk sash draped across her belly that read, "Mommy to be." Her skin glowed, hair curled, and every step was a performance. When she spotted me, her smile didn't falter, but it didn't stretch either. She waved, tiny and vague, like I was a coworker she hadn't expected to see. Then, in front of 24 guests with glittering glasses and phones held high, she raised hers and said, "To my baby girl," and to my only sibling, Emily, who helped me design the theme. Applause, laughter. Emily, standing beside the cake table, flushed red and mouthed, "What?" at me with a guilty smile. She looked genuinely confused, like someone who'd been handed a crown she didn't ask for. I just sipped my drink and nodded politely. That was the game here. Choke on your silence. I walked past the gift table. There it was. The centerpiece. A hand-knit baby blanket in dusky rose looped perfectly over a wicker basket. I had made it in the dead of winter, back when I heard Savannah was pregnant through a forwarded email from Brian. I mailed it to the house with no return address. Now it sat with a tag that read, "From Emily, made with love." I didn't say a word. Leo tugged at my sleeve. "Can I play with them?" He pointed to the corner where other kids were clustered around a bouncy castle. I bent to his level. "Of course, honey. Just stay where I can see you." He hesitated. "Why don't they know I'm your son?" The question was sharper than it had any right to be. "They will," I said softly, kissing his forehead. "Maybe not yet, but they will." Darren appeared beside me a few moments later, holding a glass of something fizzy. His eyes scanned the room and landed on Savannah's laughing face. "No one said a word to you?" "Oh, they've said plenty," I murmured. We drifted through the party like ghosts. People nodded politely, smiled too widely, asked vague questions like, "So, how long are you in town?" But none of them said my name. Not once. It was like I existed just at the edge of their vision. A blur they chose not to focus on. Susan passed by carrying a stack of printed photos from Savannah's maternity shoot. She didn't meet my eyes, but she stopped to chat with a woman from the garden club. "We just signed over the deed," she said, voice full of pride. "Savannah owns the house now. It's her family's legacy." Darren's jaw tightened. I touched his arm gently. "We're here," he said, voice low. "That's enough." I nodded. I wasn't sure I believed him yet. Later, near the gift table, Savannah leaned in close to a group of friends and laughed louder than she needed to. At least I didn't show up with a child and no ring. Her voice cut through the buzz of conversation like a blade. For a moment, the air went perfectly still. I saw Susan stiffen, Emily freeze mid-sip, Brian glance at me over his shoulder. I lifted my mimosa slowly, smiled. "Some of us don't need rings to be whole." The silence cracked. A few guests chuckled awkwardly. Savannah's smile tightened, but she turned away before anyone could read her expression. That should have been the end of it. I had done what I came to do. Bear witness. But then the front door creaked open. The air shifted again. A man stepped in. Tall, late 40s, worn blazer, cradling a small child. He looked confused, like he'd walked into the wrong hotel ballroom. Leo's face lit up. "Daddy," he shouted, racing across the room. The room spun. Then Leo turned to me and said, loud and clear, "Mommy, you brought them?" Susan's voice cracked louder than the champagne cork. The room turned in unison, head swiveling toward the open doorway as if a gust of wind had swept in, carrying truth with it. Her voice had slipped. Too loud. Too shrill. Not at all the composed matriarch she had spent the morning curating. Leo rushed past rows of pastel chairs and helium balloons, weaving between mimosa glasses and floral arrangements, arms outstretched. "Daddy!" Darren caught him mid-run, lifting him with one arm, spinning once before settling him on his hip. His smile was easy, practiced, but his eyes were locked on me. One nod. Just one. And he reached into his coat and handed me the folder. The folder I had debated for nights. The one with years of silence compressed into paper cuts and receipts. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor as I stepped forward. The music didn't stop, but it faltered. Someone fumbled with the Bluetooth. The chatter fell to murmurs. Savannah stood frozen beside the cake, a pink plastic knife still in her hand. I didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I opened the folder like I was reading bedtime stories to Leo. Calm, rhythmic, unforgiving. First came the estate transfer. Notarized, dated, marked uncontested. A word that only applied because no one told me I was in the contest. Then the tax statements showing my name on the title for 3 years. Then a printed screenshot of Susan's text message. "Don't worry, I'll fix the paperwork. Savannah needs this house more than she does." Each page landed on the gift table with a soft slap. A tremble rippled through the crowd like wind on tall grass. Guests leaned closer. Some exchanged glances. Others began pulling out their phones. Not to text, but to record. "Wait." Brian's voice cut through. He held up his phone, displaying an old group photo from a science fair, 10 years ago, judging by the dated fonts and youthful awkwardness. "Isn't that Rowan? Why is her name blurred out in the online album?" I looked at Savannah. She didn't answer. Emily stood next to her, color draining from her face. "The blanket," she murmured. "That wasn't from me, was it?" Still no response. I turned to the room, my voice even, low. "You all wanted a party, not a reckoning. But here's the thing. Silence only works when no one asks questions. And today, a child asked the right one. Leo tilted his head from Darren's arms, watching me like I was reading a fairy tale he hadn't heard before. I stepped forward and knelt beside him. "You asked me why no one here knew you were my son," I said, loud enough for every guest to hear. "It's because they didn't want to remember I existed." Darren placed a steady hand on my shoulder. I stood, looking directly at Susan. "You tried to erase me. I brought evidence, but I think Leo already told the truth." Susan's mouth opened, but no words came. Her gaze flitted from me to the folder to Darren, then back to Leo, as if the boy had conjured this whole thing with nothing but the word mommy. Savannah tried to speak. "Rowan, But her voice faltered. She took a step back, bumping into the cake table. Her hands clenched the knife like it was a lifeline. Someone in the back of the room, an aunt, maybe, or a distant cousin, raised their phone and tapped the record button. A red light blinked in the corner of my eye. They were listening now. Brian tapped the screen. "Why would anyone crop you out of your own award ceremony?" The room had stilled to a breath. He stood near the fireplace now, arm extended, holding up the original photo on his phone. A young Rowan, me, in a white lab coat, clutching a plastic trophy, beaming in front of a trifold science fair poster. Behind me, Susan, smiling, her hand on my shoulder. Savannah beside her, mid-eye roll. It was dated, grainy, but clear. No blur, no edits. Just a memory as it had actually happened. Several guests leaned in. A woman with heavy earrings let out a low, "Wow." "It was the year you won state," Brian added. "I remember that day. I took this on Dad's camera." I nodded, lips pressed tight. "And this?" He flipped screens, revealing the version from Savannah's blog. My face was blurred. The caption read, "So proud of our family's legacy in science. Go Savannah." He didn't need to say more. Emily hovered near the table, her hands visibly trembling. Her voice broke the silence. "I didn't make that blanket," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Susan handed it to me and said to just smile when Savannah opened it. I thought it was from a friend who couldn't attend." Susan turned, sharp. "That's enough." "No," I said, my voice cutting through like clean wire. "It's not." I walked to the center of the room, opened the folder again, and slid a document free. "This," I said, holding it up, "is the transfer of the family house. The one you claimed Savannah earned. The line right here, 'Ownership relinquished without consent,' was added by your lawyer, Susan. Except, as you well know, I never relinquished anything." "Rowan," Susan snapped, "this is not the time or place." "You made this the place," I said, turning to the guests. "You invited an audience." Gasps whispered like static through the room. Susan tried again, hands flailing slightly. "This is old family drama, misunderstandings." "Then maybe you can explain this one too." I pulled out a printed email, highlighted in yellow. I handed it to Emily. Her brows furrowed as she read, lips parting with each line. Emily looked up, stunned. "This says, 'I need you to fill Rowan's place quietly. It's important Savannah feels supported.'" The room exhaled all at once. "I didn't know they were erasing a whole person," Emily said, her voice cracking. "I thought I was just filling a seat." Susan's hands clenched into small, useless fists. From somewhere near the back, a phone screen glowed red again. Someone was still filming. My mother's eyes flicked to it, and that was the first time I saw fear behind her perfect mascara. Savannah's hand slapped the gift table as she stepped forward. Her voice broke with rage. "You want to humiliate us? You want to fight? You've got it." Leo, standing beside Darren, reached out and wrapped his fingers around mine. His palm was warm, trembling a little. He looked up at me, whispering, "Did we win?" "I remember you," an old family friend murmured. "You used to organize these events, and then one year, you disappeared." Her voice was soft, tinged with confusion, not malice. She stood near the buffet table, untouched trays of finger sandwiches sweating under the soft light. Her pearl earrings matched the ones I remembered from dozens of events. Birthdays, fundraisers, galas. She used to bring lemon bars in a glass dish with my name scribbled on masking tape. I hadn't heard her voice in years. "I didn't disappear," I replied. "I was edited out." The woman blinked, then turned away, but her expression lingered, one of dawning unease. Behind her, guests clustered in quiet groups, murmuring more than mingling. The baby shower had collapsed into something else entirely. No laughter, no toasts, just the scent of wilting hydrangeas and cooling quiches. I stood at the kitchen island, the folder still beside me, but now closed. I no longer needed it open. Its contents had done their work. No yelling, no dramatics. Just evidence. Just memory. Brian flipped through an old photo album he'd found on the console near the bar. A printed relic of past parties, laminated pages curled with time. His brows furrowed deeper with each turn. "You're not in a single shot after 2019, he said. I already knew. He held one page up to the light. "But I remember this one. This was the Wren Foundation's scholarship dinner, right? You handled the whole thing. I remember the color-coded spreadsheets." "I still have the receipts," I murmured. From the living room, a chime sounded. The digital guest book. Brian had pulled it up on the TV, linking it to his phone. "She signed this in 2020, he said, pointing. "Rowan Wren." But someone faded the text out in the online version. Almost invisible. I walked to the edge of the living room, watching the screen flicker with names. Under Wren Gala 2020, the faintest ghost of a signature lingered. Someone had lowered the opacity in the code. It was technical. Intentional. Susan appeared beside me, arms crossed. "You left, Rowan." "We just adapted." I turned to her, my voice steady. "You didn't adapt. You erased." Gasps stirred from a corner. One woman muttered, "How many of us believed the version they told?" Susan inhaled sharply, eyes flashing. "You embarrassed us," she snapped, louder than before. "You had no stable job, no plans. You floated. Savannah gave us something to be proud of. What did you give us?" I met her eyes. "Silence," I said. "And I'm taking it back." For a moment, Susan looked like she might slap me. But instead, she turned, stormed past the half-cut cake, knocking a mimosa glass in her wake. The clink rang across the room like a bell. Then Darren walked back in, brushing the hair from his forehead, Leo trailing behind him with a dandelion in hand. He held up his phone. "You're trending." I blinked. He handed it to me. A video. The one from earlier. Brian's science fair photo on screen. Me standing silent beside it. Leo's voice in the background. "Why don't they know I'm your son?" The caption read, "Erased by her own family," until her son asked one question. And beneath it, thousands of likes, comments, shares. Someone had posted receipts, screenshots, records. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Around the room, people began to leave. Not with polite waves or hugs, but with wide eyes and tight lips. Not because the party had ended, because the illusion had. They brought out an extra chair for me. I didn't sit in it. It was white with a pastel ribbon tied to the back. Like the others, like it had always been meant for me. But we all knew better. The sun dipped low behind the backyard fence, casting long amber shadows across the grass. The balloons had begun to sag, their helium fleeing, strings dragging across the patio like forgotten streamers. Plates lay half-covered with napkins, untouched quiches congealing in the evening air. I sat on the porch swing instead. Leo curled up beside me, his cheek resting against my arm. Darren, quiet as ever, sat on the other side, one foot gently pushing the swing forward and back. From the kitchen, the sound of ice clinking in a glass, the murmur of someone moving dishes, but no more voices, no more games. just the winding down of something brittle and curated that had finally cracked. Susan stepped out the back door. I didn't move. She held herself upright, arms clasped in front like she was about to deliver a sermon or an apology, though I knew better than to expect either. "You've made your point," she said, her voice flat. I looked down at the folder in my lap, thinner now. I pulled one sheet free, signed, notarized, stamped. I stood and handed it to her. "I'm rescinding any and all claims to the rent estate," I said. "Effective immediately." Susan's hand trembled slightly as she took it. "Why?" I could have laughed. Instead, I just said, "Because peace isn't something you give. It's something I claim." She stared at the document. Her eyes scanned it but never found the loophole. There wasn't one. "And what do you want?" she asked finally. "After all this?" I turned back toward the swing where Leo now hummed softly to himself, tracing patterns on the armrest with his fingers. "I want a memory," I said, "that you can't crop out." Her mouth opened, then closed. Behind her, a screen door creaked. Someone watching. Maybe Emily. Maybe no one at all. Susan didn't say goodbye. She folded the paper once, then again, then disappeared back inside. Brian appeared a few minutes later, keys jangling in his hand, the album under one arm. "I always knew something wasn't right," he said. "But I didn't ask. I'm sorry for that." "You don't owe me anything," I said. He looked at me, then at Leo. "You were always part of this family. They just couldn't see it." Then he smiled, soft, unguarded, and walked toward his car. I let the silence settle again, the kind that didn't press down but let you breathe. A cricket chirped. The sky deepened into a shade of violet that matched the wax seal from the envelope. Leo sat up. "Mom? Yeah?" He tilted his head. "Do I have a grandma?" I paused. Darren stopped the swing with the sole of his shoe, grounding us. "You have a history," I said slowly. "But your family is right here." Leo nodded like that made perfect sense. To him, it probably did. From inside the house, a baby cried. A sharp, sudden wail, and then the sound of footsteps. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Leo tugged my sleeve. "Can we get ice cream now?" I smiled. "Yeah, buddy. We can." That night, after we returned to the hotel and Leo finally drifted off with cookie dough on his chin, I checked my phone. One new message. "Emily, if you ever want your blanket back, it's yours." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened the camera roll and found the photo I'd taken earlier. Just me, Darren, and Leo sitting side by side on the porch swing. 3 chairs, no one missing. I saved it twice. They brought out an extra chair for me. A white one, wrapped in tulle and pale gold ribbon, identical to the rest, yet somehow it stood out like a last-minute apology. I didn't sit in it. I didn't even acknowledge it. Just seeing it was enough to confirm what I already knew. It was never about having no seat. It was about being told I didn't belong at the table in the first place. The sun had dipped low behind the mountains of Scottsdale, casting a soft orange hue over the backyard where the party had crumbled into silence. The pastel balloons were deflating in slow surrender. Paper plates fluttered along the grass like surrender flags. Somewhere inside, a baby cried. I didn't turn back. Darren sat beside me on the porch swing, Leo curled into his side, thumb in mouth, his curls damp with evening heat. My fingers wrapped loosely around a copy of the affidavit. Simple, unassuming, yet loud in its finality. I had signed it hours ago, right after Susan asked me, with a veneer of control cracking along her voice. "So, what is it you want, Rowan?" I told her. "Peace, and a memory you can't crop out." She blinked, almost confused, like she had expected me to ask for the house back, or an apology she didn't mean. But I wasn't there for old rooms or hollow gestures. I was there to reclaim the story they tried to erase, and I had done it without a single scream. Brian had walked us to the car earlier, just before the sun began to set. He didn't say much, only, "You were always part of this family. They just couldn't see it." I smiled and said nothing. There was nothing else left to prove. I'd brought receipts, yes. I'd brought photos, emails, documents, and a memory more stubborn than Susan's manipulation. But the most powerful thing I brought that day was my silence. The kind that speaks louder than any performance. The kind that doesn't beg for validation, but demands acknowledgement. Inside my purse was the phone Darren handed me earlier. The post had gained traction. Someone had live-streamed the confrontation, captured the science fair photo, the quiet confession from Emily, and the one line that had somehow become a comment thread anthem. "You didn't adapt. You erased." The internet was unforgiving when the truth was that clean. Savannah had slammed the nursery door after Leo called Darren Daddy. Susan had tried to pivot, to salvage what little pride she thought she had left. But reputations built on lies don't survive the air of transparency. I leaned back on the swing, the wooden frame creaking gently under our weight. Leo stirred, looked up at me with half-lidded eyes, and whispered, "Do I have a grandma?" I paused. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I did. "You have a history," I said, brushing his hair back. "But your family is right here." He smiled, satisfied with the answer, as if he understood something unspoken. Darren kissed the top of his head, and we all sat there, quiet, watching as twilight settled over a house that no longer belonged to me in title, but never did in truth. In my handbag was also a printed photo someone had handed me on the way out. Me, Darren, and Leo on the porch swing. 3 chairs, no one missing, a perfect picture. Not for posting, not for validation, just for us. A quiet reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't fire and fury. It's presence. It's being undeniable in the face of people who once made you invisible. She didn't reclaim the seat they once denied her. She outgrew the table altogether. The lies they crafted to justify her absence unraveled in daylight, thread by thread. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. Some stories aren't rewritten. They're reclaimed, one undeniable truth at a time. They brought out an extra chair for me. A white one, tied with pastel ribbon, like it was supposed to fix 5 years of silence. I didn't sit in it, because I wasn't there to be re-included. I was there to prove I never left. If you've ever been made to feel like a ghost in your own story, if you've ever been cropped out, rewritten, or told your silence was peace, remember this: your presence is power. Your truth doesn't need permission to exist. Leave a comment below if you've ever had to reclaim your place without asking. And subscribe for more stories where the ones they erased come back undeniable.